All right. So real quick, before we get started into the second half of last meeting's talk, I want to bring your attention to this guy here. Just a quick read. It looks like this pilot didn't do a functions check before takeoff. We usually do a pre-takeoff checklist that includes a full flight control test to see if everything works correctly. So you pitch up, pitch down, roll left, roll right, check the rudders, check the ailerons, they move in the right direction, and you check your throttle and all your controls essentially. And the NTSB is saying this guy essentially failed to do that and didn't realize that his control lock was on the controls, and so he actually crashed and passed away. So I just want to tell you or remind you how important it is to to do your checklists every time you're flying. Pre-takeoff checklists, including your pre-flight, before takeoff, cruise, climb, cruise, descent, and before landing checklists are all super important. Yeah. You guys have any news? How's your flight training going? If you're flying, I'd love to hear about how things are going. Anybody been flying the last couple of days? No? No worries. Cool. So let me share my screen here. We'll switch back to this guy. And I'll remember to so last time we met, I actually recorded the wrong screen, unfortunately. And so that's why I didn't post last meeting's video. I'm still trying to clean it up and fix it. We're just going to pick it up where we left off from last week. We're going to talk about transponders and then get into radio phraseology and stuff like that. So we already talked about these already, but just to remind you, military mode 3 corresponds to mode A and C, the civilian side. The standard squawk code for VFR pilots is 1200. And then you only hit ident when ATC requests. So whenever we're flying, let's say we depart Payne and we're trying to go fly up to Bellingham, we can ask for something called flight following. We can call up Whidbey Approach or Seattle Approach or whoever and ask them to keep an eye on us while we're flying. And they will tell us to squawk a discrete code instead of 1200. That helps them keep track of us. When they're done with us, when they're like, all right, you're out of my airspace, go do your own thing, they're going to say squawk VFR, frequency change approved, have a good day. That means go back to the 1200, the standard squawk code, and then you're allowed to change your radio frequency to the next frequency you need, like the weather or, ATIS or tower or whoever else. Ident only when ATC requests. That basically sends out a big beacon that says, hey, we're over here. And then these are the emergency squawk codes. 75 taken alive, that's hijack. 7600 is lost comms, or 76 radios nixed. And then 77 is your general emergency. 77 going to heaven. We don't want to squawk these unless we absolutely have to. I think we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago when a dude accidentally squawked 7500 when they told him to squawk altitude. That means change your transponder from standby to alt or altitude, not squawk your altitude. So don't do that. And then 7777 is our military interceptor code. All right. Whenever we talk to flight service station, that's radio. So like when we talk to tower, they're called tower. When we're talking to approach, we call them approach. When you see a flight service station, we call them radio. And then whenever we talk to them, we want to refer to ourselves like this: Cessna 1234. That's our tail number. Or Beechcraft 4567. Or Baron Juliet 2. Altitudes below 18,000, we're going to say 4,500, and it's always an MSL. We're not going to, they don't want to hear AGL or any weird altitude. Above 18,000 feet, let me go back. Above 18,000 feet, do you guys remember what kind of altitude we'll be flying? What we're going to do?
You use the flight level notation?
Yeah, that's right. And do you know what we change inside the aircraft above 18,000?
Oh, yeah, you change the barometer setting to 29.92.
That's right. And do you remember what that's called?
The standard pressure.
Right. It's called pressure altitude. So we'll be flying pressure altitude. So we, like you just said, we change our altimeter from the local altimeter setting to 29.92 inches of mercury, and then we're basically flying pressure altitudes from that point on. ATC advisories, whenever they tell you, hey, you've got traffic at your blank o'clock, let's say 2 o'clock, they are basing that off your ground track. Let me draw a little bit here. So if we are flying, we've got our nose pointed in this direction, right? and there's wind coming off our left side, it's going to blow us off to the left. So we were actually going to be flying like this. So our aircraft is going to look to ATC as though we're flying in this direction. That's our ground track. They're going to say traffic is at your 2 o'clock relative to your ground track, not where your nose is pointed, not your heading. So keep that in mind. Your ATC advisories are based on your ground track. And yeah, like the face of a clock. So 12 o'clock would be directly in front of you. 3 o'clock is to the right. 6 is to your 6 or your behind you. It's funny. 6 o'clock to me means behind you. So like I'll be talking to somebody who has no idea what they're talking what anything about aviation. And I'm like, yeah, check your 6. And they're like, what are you talking about? So 6 o'clock means behind you, and then 9 o'clock is on your left. They will also include things like distance, direction, and altitude for any traffic advisory. So they'll say something like, Cessna 3 Echo, traffic at your 3 o'clock, 5,000. And you will reply either, you're going to look for them, of course. And if you have them in sight, then you'll say traffic in sight. You can say negative contact, which means I do not have that traffic in sight. You can also say, 3 Echo looking, your call sign, and you can say looking for the traffic. A lot of pilots will like to say silly things like tally ho, like I've got the bandit in sight or something goofy like that. It's fun, but I've heard controllers prefer you use the standard phraseology like traffic in sight or negative contact. These are your ATC light gun signals. So if we have a radio failure, first thing we're going to do, actually, what do you guys think? If we have a radio failure, what's the first thing we're going to do?
One of the first things you could do is squawk the radio failure code.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. So squawk your radio failure code. Do you remember what it is?
7600.
That's right. 7600. Perfect. So we're going to troubleshoot our radios to see if we can get something. One of the first thing we're going to do, we're going to check to see if maybe we, tune the wrong radio frequency. Go back to the last radio frequency and see if that, it's something goofy that you did. If it's not, an incorrect frequency and it is a radio problem or radio failure, 7600 is your squawk code. And then when we go back to a towered airfield to try to land, we're going to observe the flow of traffic. So let's say we're back at Payne and we're coming from the west. And before we get into the airspace, we're squawking 7600 and we're paying attention outside our aircraft to see if there's any other traffic. If we see that they're, in a left pattern here, obviously we want to follow that pattern, enter on the 45 at traffic pattern altitude, and then land. So you're going to observe the flow of traffic, enter at traffic pattern altitude on the 45 for the downwind for whichever pattern we're doing. And then you're going to watch for these light gun signals. It's a really big, beautiful signal you're going to get from tower. I've gotten it twice, both in the same aircraft. My radio failed in 67901 at Northway. And so watch the tower. They're going to give you a big green signal. That means you are cleared to land. If they give you something like a red light, that means give way, continue circling. Flashing red is don't land here. It's unsafe. If you see flashing green, that means return for a landing. So that's like if you depart and you lose your radios. Flashing white doesn't really apply in flight. And then flashing red and green, there's something weird going on. There's something that you need to pay attention to. It's exercise extreme caution. If you don't have your radios on the ground, let's say you've landed, you're going to look for those light gun signals again. A big green, beautiful light means you're cleared for takeoff. Flashing green is you're cleared to taxi back to where you need to go. Steady red is stop. That one's pretty obvious. Flashing red is taxi clear of the runway, get off the runway. Flashing white, return to your starting point. Flashing red and green is, again, extreme caution. And then if you are, in a car or something like that, you can watch for these gun signals again. Green is go. Flashing green doesn't apply to vehicles on the ground. Red is stop, clear the taxiway, return to start point. It's pretty close to the same as aircraft on the ground. Questions? So to reiterate, talk me through the steps that you would take after you think you might have lost your radios.
Check your frequencies, and if that's not the problem, then squawk 7600 and watch for light gun signals.
Yeah, pretty much. And don't forget to watch for the flow of traffic. Observe the flow of traffic and make sure you're not, going to enter in the opposite direction. Yep, you got it. What are ATC advisories based on?
Ground track,
That's right, ground track. And what does a steady green light mean when you are flying around the airport?
clear for landing.
Clear to land.
Clear to land, that's right. All right, let's move on to the ELT, or the Emergency Locator Transmitter. This is a little device we have on board the aircraft if we get into a spot of trouble and make an unscheduled stop. It's going to transmit on 121.5 and 243.0 megahertz. It's essentially an emergency beacon that's going to say, "Hey, we've crashed and we need some help." I don't know if any of you guys have been in Civil Air Patrol, but I used to be part of a ground team, and we would go and practice searching for these beacons. It was pretty cool. You can monitor 121.5 to make sure that your ELT, let's say you have a rough landing, you want to make sure it hasn't been activated. You can monitor 121.5 for that. Your VHF direction finder displays your magnetic direction from a ground station. So when you're in the air, you need to find a ground station using a direction finder. This gives you a magnetic direction from that ground station. It does require a transmitter and a receiver to function. Just keep that in mind. Let's see. Yeah, if you have an emergency, you can always ask for help from ATC. We always remember aviate, navigate, communicate. So aviate first, fly the aircraft, worry about talking to ATC once you've got everything squared away. After you've got the aircraft trimmed, or you've got the aircraft basically stable, navigate, figure out where you are and what's going on. So aviate, navigate, and then communicate. The last thing in this little checklist is to talk to ATC. Once you've got the aircraft stabilized, you know where you are, then you can contact ATC and be like, "Hey, I need some help," or "Hey, we've got an emergency going on." Fly the plane first. If you're not in contact with ATC, you can monitor 121.5, squawk 7700 for our emergency frequency, and you can use these words. If you're in distress, you can say "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday," or if the situation is urgent, you can say "Pan, Pan, Pan," and then talk to whoever communicate and say, "Hey, we're going down." You want to include things like your aircraft ID and type, where you are, where you're headed, what's going on with your aircraft, what's the nature of your emergency, and what you plan on doing. If you're going to continue on to your destination, or if you're going to try to divert to a different airfield, or set it down near a landmark or something like that. You can also include things like this: the weather, what's going on, if there's a thunderstorm in the area, hail, tornadoes, that kind of stuff, what altitude you are currently at during your emergency, how much fuel you have remaining on board, the number of people on board, and anything else that you think might be useful for anybody who can come and rescue you. This is always a good. This is kind of why it's always a good idea to either file a flight plan or ask ATC for flight following. Your flight plan. So, comparing to IFR world, if we need to go fly somewhere and it's cloudy and we can't get there VFR, an IFR flight plan basically puts us into the system, and ATC is going to help us navigate to that location. They're going to sequence us and keep us away from other aircraft, and keep us safe. A VFR flight plan doesn't really do that. It's basically just saying, "Hey, this is what I plan on doing. If I don't get there, could you send like a rescue chopper my way and just see if you can save me?" That's really all it does. They're not going to give you any vectors. They're not going to give you any preferential treatment if you file a VFR flight plan. All it pretty much is, "Hey, if I don't make it by this time at this place, I need you to send somebody to come look for me." So VFR flight plans are a good idea. Flight following is a good idea because while, again, they're not going to give you any special treatment, they'll at least be watching you and keeping an eye on you to make sure that if anything does go wrong, they can send somebody out to help you out. Questions about emergencies? No, cool. All right. LASSO. LASSO stands for the Land and Hold Short Operations. This is basically when you have intersecting runways. I'm going to draw a picture here. Let's say we've got one runway here, another runway here. Bam. Look at my beautiful picture. All right, so we've got one runway this direction, another runway landing this direction. Well, if you've got two aircraft landing here, you're going to tell one of them, "Hey, before you get to this runway, I need you to land and hold short." So they're going to land, and instead of using up the entire runway, they're going to stop before the intersecting runway. That is what land and hold short means. Before you can accept this clearance, you have to verify that you can do this. You can't accept it and then blow past it, right? That's no good. You do have the authority to say no, thank you. You can say unable. I love being a pilot because you can literally just say unable, and they have to live with it. If you cannot land and hold short, you say unable, and they'll say, Roger, clear to land, or Roger, go around, or do a left 360 or something, and they'll find a way to make it work. But you never have to accept a land and hold short clearance. And by the way, you should decline it if you think it's going to compromise safety. Don't accept a clearance if you think it's going to compromise the safety of you or your aircraft or your passengers. You do need some weather minimums to accept the land and hold short clearance. That's 1,000-foot ceilings and 3 miles of visibility. And remember, as a student pilot, you should never accept a land and hold short clearance. So student pilots are not authorized to accept a lasso. Does that make sense? If I'm going too fast, by the way, I know I get excited, so let me know. Quick, what are land and hold short operations in your own words?
A clearance to land on a runway, but only use part of it in order to leave a intersecting runway clear.
Exactly, you got it. And who should not participate?
Student pilots or pilots who don't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. Student pilots is they're going to give you that on the exam. But student pilots, and if you don't want to accept it, you can always say unable. What is the emergency frequency?
It was 121.5 and 240 something.
Got it. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Boom. Okay, so that was the second half of 2 weeks ago's meeting. Any questions before we move on to the quiz portion? And then we're going to do some extra stuff here. No? Sweet. All right. The wind condition that requires maximum caution when avoiding wake turbulence on landing is a...
Was it a light quartering tailwind?
That's right. Light quartering tailwind. If we're landing behind another aircraft and we've got wind coming from, our back, it's going to keep those wingtip vortices on the runway, and it's a tailwind. That's never a good thing to land with. So yeah, light quartering tailwind. During a night flight, you observe a steady red light and a flashing red light ahead and at the same altitude. What is the general direction of the movement of the other aircraft?
Crossing to the left.
Yeah, crossing to the left. So let's draw that out really quick. We have our little aircraft here. Bam. Oh my gosh, my airplane drawing skills suck. So we've got that steady red light. There's a red light on the left wing and a flashing red light. That's our rotating beacon, or our beacon light. If we saw a green light, that would be on the right side. Look at that beautiful airplane. That would be a green light here. Green, not red. After landing at a tower-controlled airport, when should the pilot contact ground? What am I doing here?
When advised to do so.
When advised to do so, you got it. All operations within Class Charlie airspace must be... What do you guys think?
No, I was thinking A.
I don't know.
Yeah, this one's B, in communication with responsible ATC facility. Yeah, we don't have to be on a flight plan in Class Charlie. That's Class Alpha. Class Alpha, you need to be on an IFR flight plan. You just need to have that, two-way radio communications. Unless otherwise authorized, if flying a transponder-equipped aircraft, a pilot should squawk which VFR code?
The first one.
1200.
That's right, 1200. 76, radios Nick, 77, going to heaven. ATC advises traffic, 12 o'clock. This advisory is relative to your...
Ground track.
Ground track.
Ground track, you got it. A steady green light signal directed from the control tower to an aircraft in flight is a signal that the pilot...
Clear to land.
Clear to land. While on a VFR cross country and not in contact with ATC, what frequency would you use in the event of an emergency?
The first one?
121.5.
Yeah, 121.5. Who should not participate in the Land and Hold Short Operations Program?
Student pilots?
Student pilots.
Student pilots, you got it. Which of the following is true concerning flaps?
Is it B?
Oh, yeah, B.
Yep. Flaps allow an increase in the angle of descent without increasing airspeed. Boom, we got it. We're going to skip sim practice. So keep reading the Airplane Flying Handbook. Do you guys all have a copy of that? If not, let me know, and I'll show you how to get a free copy. If you are serious about getting your knowledge exam done, keep testing yourself using this free FAA exam prep from King Schools. Do you guys have any questions about today's discussion before we move on to some more other topics that I think might be interesting to you? No? Cool. Let me switch gears here.
I have a general question.
Yeah, send it.
Do you need to pass the knowledge test before you can fly with like an instructor? Or
Nope. No, you can go fly with an instructor right now. Yeah, actually, a lot of pilots will go do like their first 20 hours or so. I know of a lot of instructors that like to have their student pilots complete their written exam before their first solo, but I don't think there's any legal requirement for that.
I see. Gotcha.
Wait, you can do your first solo before doing the knowledge exam?
Yeah, so schools will have their own pre-solo quiz, but you don't have to do the knowledge exam before your first solo.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's see.
That's
I'm
it.
thinking, yeah, E6B. What do you guys want to learn about today? We've got a good half-hour chunk here. I've got something prepared for you, but are there any specific questions you want me to answer before we do that?
Cool. Yeah. When you are doing a normal takeoff, is there a situation where you might want to take off with less than full power to preserve engine life?
I have never heard of anybody taking off with anything less than full power for any particular reason. Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. All right, so today let's talk about the E6B and weather and airspace. So this is a student of mine asked me to help him with some stuff, and this is a lesson I had prepared for him. I thought you guys might appreciate it. So actually, let me give you a heads up, or give you some news. My most recent student passed his knowledge exam with like a 92% on Saturday. So right now I've got a 100% pass rate, so that's pretty awesome. 100% first time pass rate. And I think everybody that I've sent has passed with above 85%. So 100% first time go and above 85% on the exam. So I'm pretty happy about that. So a couple weeks ago, we made a study plan for him. This is kind of what it looks like. If you guys want like a specific study plan, I can meet with you one-on-one if you want to, and we can create a specific plan for you to get your knowledge exam done on top of like our weekly meetings. If you're interested, shoot me a DM. But yeah, so his 4-day plan that we made was first day, I wanted to run a diagnostic, have him do a bunch of problems and see how he did, review what he missed, and then do an overview of the E6B. He needed to work on the E6B specifically. And then create a plan for the remaining time, and then use and give him some resources for additional study. Day 2 and 3, review assignments, attack weak points, refine the study plan, and then I wanted him to create a cross-country flight plan to take all the skills we've been working on and then bring them all together. In general, what I recommend doing is go take a 60-question exam, because that's how long the actual exam is. Identify all the things that you got wrong, and then go study those specific things, right? And then go back and take a test. Alternately, you can do a 15-question test in the morning, find what you did wrong, go read them in the airplane flying handbook or the airplane flying handbook or the pilot's handbook of aeronautical knowledge. And then study those specific things that you got wrong, and then take another 15-minute quiz in the evening, or 15-question quiz in the evening, to see, if you improved on those things. That's how he did it. He went from scoring, I think, like 75, like when we first started the plan, and then at the end of the day, he scored a 92 on the exam. So I think it's a pretty effective way to work. I mean, you guys are all students. I don't know what I'm talking about. You guys are all UW students, so you guys know how to study. So let's talk about the E6B. This thing is awesome. Have you guys seen the new Lightyear movie, by the way? Anybody here seen Lightyear yet?
No.
Okay. Never mind. Spoilers. There's a part in there where he pulls out one of these, and I was like, no way. I was so excited. He pulls out his flight computer and starts doing calculations on his canopy, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. So the E6B has two components. There's the wind side, that's this thing over here, and then there's the circular rule side. In general, you've got units on the outside and then time on the inside. So when we use these guys, it's essentially we're setting a rate, like 120 nautical miles, and then we set our 60-minute mark. So let me discard. Actually, let me erase these guys here. Erase all this, make it easier to see. Wait for it. Okay. So if we look on the inner scale, this darker gray section rotates. Here is our 60-minute mark, or our 1 hour mark. On the inner scale, we have an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20, an hour and 30, and it goes hour, like increments of like minutes, but like on the hour, right? On the outer on the middle scale, we've got minutes. So 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 minutes, and it goes around. And what we can do is we can shift our decimal place whenever we do these. So let's say we wanted to go 120 nautical miles per hour. We would rotate this dark gray section here until the 60-minute mark, or our hour mark, is across from our 120 mark. And we would just move the decimal place over. So 120 over 60, or 120 nautical miles per hour. And then we'd read whatever we need, like, how many minutes we've been flying, and the distance and stuff like that. Also, we have conversion things we can do. So here we have fuel in pounds. Oh, by the way, be careful. Let me erase this again. When you use these guys, be careful what you're using, or what notch you're using. If you notice, this arrow right here does not correspond to the 12. It corresponds to kilometers. So if we wanted to convert from kilometers to, say, statute miles or something like that, that's the arrow we use. It doesn't correspond to the 1-2. The 1-2 is this line right here. Just be careful. That's a pretty common error. So if we want to convert fuel pounds to gallons, we would put the number of, or the amount of pounds of fuel we have here, and we would read on this side how many gallons that is, and vice versa. If we wanted to say 13 gallons, we would put the 13 here, and then we would read how many pounds 13 gallons is. And we can also convert nautical miles to statute miles. Yeah. There's also a temperature conversion chart here, and there's density altitude, and you can find density altitude and true altitude over here on this guy. We would basically set our pressure altitude across from our air temperature, and then read our density altitude, or set pressure altitude across from temperature and read our true altitude. We'll actually show you how to do these later.
I have a question.
Send
it. So is the E6B just for converting between units?
No, it's also used for calculating, time to target, distance, ground speed, density altitude, true altitude. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with it. And then we use the wind side to calculate our ground speed and our wind correction angle. So we can take our true course, what we want from our map, figure out how we need to adjust for the wind, because remember that wind is going to blow us off course, and we need to adjust for that. And then we add or subtract our magnetic variation, and so we can use this for flight planning essentially. All right, so that's kind of an overview of the E6B. Probably not the most clear, but I'm going to show you guys what I mean here in a second. So yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah, send it.
Do you only use that for flight planning, or do you also have to use that like during flight?
You can. So you can also use an electronic E6B. I like using the circular one because it doesn't require batteries, and I'm a giant nerd and I like old school World War II era technology. But you can also use an electronic E6B if you want in flight.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So let's see how best to do this. I'm trying to keep recording this because Zhao is not here. All right, is this still recording? Yeah, it looks like it. No, I guess not. Never mind. All right. So I'll post this so you guys can see it as well. And change my screen. Oh, it's good. All right, can you still see both sides, the PowerPoint presentation on the left and the E6B on the right?
Yeah.
Great, and I'm going to record this. Cool. Yeah, so in general, we're going to set the rate using the slide rule here. Yeah, so if we have a speed of 150 knots and we've been flying for 35 minutes, this is what it looks like. 150 knots, we find the 15 because we would add a 0 to it. Find our rate, put it across from 15. And let's say we wanted to know how far we flew for after 35 minutes. We're going to find the 35-minute mark. Remember, time is on the rotating part. 35 minutes, it looks like we've gone about 87 miles, right? And does that check? Let's do a quick calculation. 35 minutes divided by 60 times 150 comes out to 87.5 miles. So that checks. Let's do another one. Speed 120 knots. So we put 120 across from the hour mark there. And then for 45 minutes, we find the 45 on the middle scale. And it looks like about 90 knots, maybe 89 and change. Miles, excuse me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to post this in the chat so you guys can follow along if you are nerds like me and want to try it. Okay. Yeah, so if you guys want, you can follow along. No worries if you don't want to. I get it. So speed, 90 knots. We would find the 90, put it across from our hour mark, and then an hour and 40 minutes. Now we're going to, instead of look at the middle scale, we're going to look at the inner scale. That's an hour and 40 minutes. Looks like about 150 miles. So let's talk about fuel endurance. Very similar. We're going to find our rate and set it first, and then read what we need to. So if we have 4.5 hours of fuel and our ground speed of 125 knots, what's our rate in this case? What's our something per hour here? It's our 125 knots. 125 knots is 125 nautical miles per hour. So we would find 125, put it across from our hour mark there, and we have 4.5 hours of fuel. So we know we can go for 4.5 hours. That means we have a range of 565 miles, about, give or take. So again, looking at the next problem, ground speed of 120 knots. That's 120 nautical miles per hour. And we have 3 hours of fuel. We'll find the 3-hour mark. And looks like we have a range of about 360 miles. And let's see if that checks. 120 times 3 hours, 120 nautical miles per hour times 3 hours. 360 miles. Bam. Does that make sense? Is it coming a little clearer? Maybe.
What's the difference, like on the first or like second bullet point and then the third bullet point, like
this one versus this one?
yeah.
Yeah, so the top one is asking how far you've gone in a certain amount of time. The second question is asking what is our range? If we have this amount of fuel, how far can we fly?
Okay.
Yeah, so a ground speed of 110 knots, that's 110 nautical miles per hour. 6 hours of fuel comes out to 660 miles about. Yeah, so that's that kind of problem, that flavor of problem. I hope that makes sense. A different variation of this is if you don't know what your ground speed is, but you know how long you've been flying and you know how far you've flown. So now we can put in our distance across from our time. So let's say 26 miles. We know we've flown 26 miles and it took us 13 minutes to do so. We find our 26 and our 13, set them across from each other. That's 25, 26. Makes sense. Here's 25, here's 26. And then we find our rate. Looks like our rate is about 120 knots-ish. 30 nautical miles in 17 minutes. We find our 30 nautical miles, 17 minutes, set it across from each other. And our rate is 106 knots, 106 nautical miles per hour. And then 22 nautical miles in 12 minutes. Looks like 110 knots. So in this case, we don't know what our rate is, but we know how far we've flown and the time it took us to do so. Now we can figure out what our ground speed is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, so now they might have a fuel consumption and endurance question. So in this case, we are burning fuel at a certain rate, and we have a total amount of fuel. Now they're asking how long can we fly? In this case, in the first one, we have 8.4 gallons per hour. That would be like if we read from our pilot operating handbook that our fuel burn per hour is 8.4 gallons per hour, and we know we have a full tank of 56 gallons. How far can we fly? Let's find out. We find the 8.4 gallons, set it across from our hours for our 8.4 gallons per hour, and 56 gallons total. 56 gallons, and we can go for 6 hours and 40 minutes. Is that about right? Let's see. 56 divided by 8.4. Yeah, 6.6 hours. 6.66 hours. Yeah, about 6 hours and 40 minutes. Here,
that device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 8.4 gallons per hour. We've got 56 gallons right here. And we read our hours here. 6 hours and 40 minutes or so. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Were you guys able to pull up the E6B on your end if you are interested in doing so? No? Okay, cool. No worries. I'll keep going then. I'll do it on my end. So let's say we've got 7.2 gallons per hour. That's how much we're burning per hour. 7.2 per hour, 50 gallons total. We can go for about 6 hours and 55 minutes, roughly. And then 6.5 gallons per hour is there. And 45 gallons total is, about another 6 hours and 55 minutes or so. I don't know why I did all these the same way. That makes sense. So in general, set your rate, find what you need, and then read how much time you got. Let's do some quick conversions. If we need to convert nautical miles to statute miles, let's say we need to convert 7 nautical miles to statute miles, it'd be 8.1 statute miles or so, roughly. So we read our nautical miles here and statute miles on this arrow. right? Same thing with kilometers and nautical miles. We got our kilometers here, nautical miles over here. And yeah, does that make sense? I think we covered this earlier before we started doing these problems. Are you guys super bored?
The link that you posted is like an image that.
Oh,
Can't.
really? All right, let me
Yeah.
try again. Let me try again. How about now?
E6B for the E6B.
Oh yeah, that's weird. That's weird.
Yeah, it works. It works now.
Sweet. Yeah. All right, let's switch over to the wind side. This is actually, I think it's more interesting. I like the wind calculations. The first thing we're going to do when we do our wind correction angles is we're going to put in our wind. So on the left screen here, we have our true wind direction of 240. That means the wind is coming from 240 at, 38 knots. So we're going to put 240 on our true index. We're going to slide this down until the grommet is on 100 for our, we'll call that 0 essentially, and put a pencil mark on 38, on the 38 line. So 130, this is 35, 6, 37, 38 right here. So we put a pencil mark there. Next, we're going to find our true course of 300. That's what we want to fly on the map. So rotate this guy 300 and our true airspeed of 165 knots. So we're going to put the pencil mark on 165. Let me move this guy here. There, 165. Now our grommet will tell us our ground speed, and that's what we're going to use for our calculations, time to target and how long it's going to, we're going to be flying for. So here, our ground speed is 143 knots. So we're flying, our airspeed indicator is going to tell us 165, but we're actually going to be flying at 143 knots over the ground. Also, if we put an airplane right here in the center of this grommet, we've got wind pushing us from this direction. If we don't account for this wind, we're going to get blown off to the right. So instead of flying a heading of 300, we're going to get blown off to some other heading. So we count the vertical lines to account for that wind drift. So here's our 10-degree line, about 11 and a half degrees. So instead of flying 300, we would put our nose to the left by 11 degrees. So we would subtract 11 degrees from 300. So it would be 289. We would fly a heading of 289 to correct for the wind. That would be our true heading. There's one more step, though. We also have to account for the magnetic variation where we are on our planet. Remember that our true north is not co-located with the planet's magnetic north pole. There's an angular difference that we have to account for. Here in Washington State, it's about 16 degrees. And we use east as least and west as best to remember that. So if we are trying to convert to a magnetic heading, we have to subtract an additional 16 degrees from 289. So that would be 289 minus 16. I can do math. 273, something like that. You guys put me on the spot, making me uncomfortable. 289 minus 16. Yeah, 273. So 273 would be our heading that we would fly on our compass or inside the airplane. And that would get us, all that math calculations would get us to a heading of 300 over the map.
So is that like the moment when you like correct your compass or something like that?
Yeah, there's an additional correction that you might also make. Are you referring to deviation? Or do you mean like, what do you mean?
Or can't you set like your compass to already compensate for the magnetic field?
We don't do that in the airplane. Not that I'm aware of, anyways.
Oh, okay.
We
No,
basically
no.
just let the compass do its thing, and then we do the calculations on our end.
Gotcha. Okay.
For the sake of the exam, by the way, they're going to ask you either for true heading and ground speed or magnetic heading and ground speed. If they give you a magnetic variation to include in your calculations, make sure to account for that. In this case, like for these problems over here, we haven't accounted for them yet. So if you guys want, no pressure if you don't want to, give these a shot. True wind of 040, wind velocity 43, true course of 150, and an airspeed of 140. If you want, give it a shot on your end. I'm going to do them just so you know the example is recorded. But if you want to give it a shot, you're more than welcome to. And if you get it before I do, call it out. See if you can beat me.
I have a.
All right, so true wind 040. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you are using the wind side here, do you always have to mark that transparent circle with a marker each time you use it?
Every time we use it, yes.
Okay, then you would have to use an erasable marker, right?
Yeah, you just do pencil. Pencil is fine.
Okay.
All right, anybody beat me? That's okay if you didn't. All right, so I got a ground speed of 149 or 148 roughly, and a wind correction of 16 and a half degrees to the left. So instead of 150, that's 150 minus 16.5 comes out to 133. So our true heading would be 133. Let's see if I got that right. Yeah, sweet. Awesome. Questions? You want me to do another one, or you want to move on? Is this you guys bored to tears here?
Yeah, let's do another one.
Sweet. All right, ground speed of, correction. True wind direction of 330, wind velocity 25, true course of 020, true airspeed of 180. So we're going to set our wind 330. $25 knots here ish. 020 for our course, and true airspeed of 180. And remember that our pencil mark goes on the airspeed and our grommet for ground speed. Grommet ground speed. So 180. I got a ground speed of 163 and a wind correction of 6 degrees to the left. So we would point our nose not at 020, but at 014. So 163 and 014. Yeah, I got it right. Sweet. It's almost like I wrote these. All right. True wind of 110. Wind first. Wind speed of 18. True course of 260. That's what we want to fly on the map. 260. And a true airspeed of 225. Ooh, we're booking it. Definitely not in that 172 here. Oh no, I messed up. 260. 225. So I got a ground speed of about 241 and a wind correction of, what is that? Is that 2 degrees? Yeah, 2 degrees. So it would come out to 258. Yeah, nice. Sweet. So that's the wind. It's pretty easy once you get used to it, or like once you practice. I mean, you see me like I can do these pretty quick. If you don't have an E6B already, they're definitely worth picking up. Give me 1 second. I like this guy because it has a plotter on the E6B as well. I don't know where. Yeah, so it's got this as well. So you've got your wind side, the circular rule, and it's got this guy. And then it also has a bunch of really cool stuff like crosswind. You can't see it. Crosswind and helpful little notes and stuff on it. It's nice. There are also metal ones that are pretty cool. So definitely worth picking up. So there's that. Yeah, we got another 10 minutes. What do you got? Do you guys want to move on to airspace, or do you guys want to talk about something else? If you have specific questions, I would love to answer those as well.
Let's do some airspace.
Sweet. What kind of airspace starts at 18,000 feet and goes up to flight level 600, excuse me.
Alpha.
A.
That's right, Class A airspace. Oh, I should make this. Yeah. Oh no, I did the thing. There we go. Yeah, so this is Class A airspace. What is the class of airspace that goes, let's see, over really populated airports? I couldn't think of the word airports. Really busy airports.
B. Class B.
That's right. Bravo. That's this guy here. I don't know why these are not coming off. Whatever. I don't care anymore. How about Payne Field? Airfields that are not quite as busy as Class Charlie or Class Bravo, but you still needed, two-way radio communications with the tower.
Delta.
That's Delta. That's right. All right. So yeah, let's get into it. Class Alpha, like you said, is 18,000 feet up to flight level 600, and it includes the airspace overlying the waters within 12 nautical miles of the coast. And you do need to be on an IFR flight plan, so keep that in mind. Class Bravo is these solid blue lines here. It goes from the surface up to 10,000 feet, and it does surround the busiest airports: Boeing, Airbus, Bravo Airspace. It is tailored to the specific airport, so you're never going to see two Class Bravo airports that look exactly the same, or airspaces that look exactly the same. You do need a clearance to enter these, so you have to hear the words "cleared to enter the Bravo," not just your call sign, as opposed to Class Charlie, where all they have to say is your call sign. So if you're down here and you talk to Whidbey Approach and they say Cessna 38 Echo, whatever, that means they've got you and you can enter. This goes up from the surface to 4,000 feet, and you do need two-way radio communications. Class Delta, that's my home field here, Payne Field, is depicted by a dashed blue circle, goes from the surface to 2,500. AGL, by the way. This little bracketed number tells you the altitude of the top of the Class Delta. And again, like Charlie, you need two-way radio communications. Now, Class Echo is the one that a lot of students struggle with because there are so many different variations of Class Echo airspace. I like this chart here because it shows you a lot of the different types. The dashed magenta circle here tells you that it's Echo at the surface, and it goes all the way up to the next kind of airspace. In this case, it goes up to Class A airspace. Outside of this magenta circle, we have two different cases. We have inside this magenta vignette, and we have outside the magenta vignette. The hard side is the outside. Inside here, it's 700 feet. Above 700 feet AGL, that is Class Echo airspace. Outside the magenta vignette, it is Class Echo from 1,200 feet AGL. Make sense? So surface, 700, 1,200. And below that is Class Gulf airspace. This is technically uncontrolled airspace. And that's where you're going to find your UAVs, UASs, that kind of stuff. And it goes from the surface up to whatever else is above it. So here it goes from the surface to 700, and then it becomes Echo. Here it goes from the surface up to, did I say 1,200? Yeah, this is 1,200. And here it's 700 because it's on the inside of the vignette. Let's see. Here would be Golf up to the Echo at 700, and then 700 up to 6,000, and it's Bravo. Basically, yeah, it just takes practice interpreting these or reading the airspace. Oh, by the way, this right here, this is your variation, your isogonic lines. So this is what I was talking about before. When you're correcting for your wind and magnetic variation, this is the angle you would add or subtract. If it's an E, east is least, subtract that. So that's what that looks like. Then there's the MIC prawn. MICPRON stands for Military Operation Areas, Controlled Firing, Prohibited, Restricted, Alert, Warning Areas, and Areas of National Security. I use the acronym MICPRON to remember those. And they're depicted on the chart as well. So MOAs, Military Operation Areas, they're MOAs. R dash something is restricted. P dash something is prohibited. I think that's it on this chart. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We talked about this last time we met. It's good to review, I think. Your weather minimums in Class A, IFR only, so VFR weather minimums do not apply. Class B, 3 miles clear of clouds. That means you need to have 3 miles of visibility to see, and then you have to just stay out of the clouds. Class Charlie, Class Delta, and Class Echo less than 10,000 feet is 3152. That's 3 miles visibility. You have to be above clouds by 1,000 feet or below them by 500 or horizontally separated by 2,000 feet. Generally, at or above 10,000 feet, it goes up to 5 miles visibility and 1,000, 1,000, 1 mile. So 1,000 above, 1,000 below, and 1 mile of horizontal separation. That's above 10,000 feet in both Class Echo and Class Golf airspace. More than 1,200 and at or above 10,000. Yeah, 5,111. So above 10,000 in general, 5,111. Class Golf is a little weird. Daytime, it's insane. You need 1 mile visibility and you have to be clear of the clouds. That is incredibly low weather requirements, in my opinion. I wouldn't personally do that unless I was on an IFR flight plan. But it's legal, so you make your decisions. Night, it goes up to 3,152. So 3 miles visibility, 1,000 above, 500 below, 2,000 horizontal. Daytime, more than 1,200 feet, but less than 10,000 feet. It's 1 mile and 1,502, so 152. And then at night, it goes up to that 3,152 again. I have a video with these as flashcards if you're interested in studying them. I've posted them before, and if you want, I can post it again. Do you have any questions about the weather minimums? These are the weather minimums required to fly VFR in these kinds of airspace. If you don't have this, it's unsafe and illegal to fly. Cool. In general, I think it's... Yeah, do you guys want to talk about weather? I think we're pretty short on time. Yeah, we got 2 minutes. I think we'll call it there. What do you guys think? Any questions? I realized today was kind of all over the place, but wanted to finish up last week's discussion and not jump straight into the next discussion, just because I figured we'd probably cut it short.
Let's see. Yeah, I actually have seen some videos where pilots will take off with less than full power, but that's more for commercial operations.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not rated to fly commercial aircraft or like heavy aircraft, so I wouldn't know, and I don't want to speak to something that I don't know about. I feel like that'd be, that's beyond my scope. So to answer your question, in my realm of things, we don't take off with anything less than full power, but I suppose commercial airliners might. You guys have any other questions? These are good questions, by the way. It's not something I did not know. So.
What's the next discussion gonna be?
Excellent question. Let's go take a look. Actually, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can follow along. Okay. Where are we here? So today, I think it was airports, ATC, and airspace. Yes. Oh, yes. Awesome. We get to talk about regulations next.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's going to be a little boring. I'm going to be straight with you guys. I do not enjoy talking about regulations. They get kind of boring, but I'll try to spice it up a little. And then you can see what everything else is. After that, we've got more regulations, but we're going to get into performance, weight and balance, medical stuff, ADM, a lot of weather. We'll get into navigation, cross-country flight planning, and at the end, I'm going to give you guys a little assignment. If you're up for it. If you're feeling up for it, you create a flight plan with a wingman. In the past, it came out kind of cool. Basically, I would assign a flight plan to 2 people, and you would fly, or you would notionally like fly a 2-ship
for either a search and rescue or something like that. And you'd have to like plan every step of the flight, starting from pre-flight planning all the way through landing and shutdown. I find them to be very interesting, but again, I'm a giant nerd, so you guys might elect to, skip that.
Have we covered constant speed propellers yet?
We might have. I can't remember. Let me think. Yes, we have. I'll post a video on it though. Right now, I have a video talking about that specifically. If you have any specific questions about it, I'd love to answer it though.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you have any questions about it? Or
Not
like,
at the moment.
Okay, cool. I'll post the video, and if you have any questions after that, feel free to shoot me a DM, and I'll address it.
All right, thanks, Monty.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for everything.
All right, I'll be here while I search for this. So if you guys want to stick around, you can. If not, see ya.